Welcome. If you've just joined us, we're actually doing panel discussions with filmmakers in honor of the Citizen Jane Film Festival. The Citizen Jane Film Festival is a women's film festival that's being hosted by Stevens College and many other people this weekend. So if you're watching this now, check us out and maybe join some of the films. We bring in women filmmakers from around the world, actually. This is a really good example of that here with Shira. And they all represent different aspects of filmmaking. Many of you know that filmmaking is a collaborative art form primarily. And we're really excited to be speaking with Shira Derman, who represents the film 999. 999 is one of our animated feature films. It's being screened tomorrow at Ragtag in the morning and also a later screening that day. And Shira is the concept illustrator of the film 999. So I actually have we've been asked a lot by reporters and other people what you're excited about, and of course we're excited about every film. But one thing that was interesting to me was that 999 was an independent animated feature film, and that's very unusual. Those of you who are listening, and we have an audience right now too that are going to ask questions. You know, animated films are very, very expensive to make. They usually entail many, many people to make such a long animated film, so they're very rarely done independently that I know of, especially also directed by a woman. So anyway, I thought maybe you could tell us a little bit of what the film 999 is in case people want to go to it, and also maybe what your role as a concept illustrator is on that.
Yeah, so I'll try because my voice is in a bit bad shape, so I hope you bear with me here. Tatia Rosenthal, who directed the film, co-wrote the script with Edgar Keret, who's an Israeli author. Is quite well known in Israel. It's been also translated into many languages. And this was like a gigantic effort on a personal level for her, because she's been getting this whole thing into shape for the last 10 years, getting the film financed. And along the way, there was a short film that she made, also in stop motion, that used the first scene of the film. That film was called A Buck's Worth, and it was financed by Sundance Film Festival. And that was one of the things along the way that helped finance 999. So eventually what happened was it became a co-production, so an Israeli-Australian co-production. And the production itself took place in Sydney, in Australia. So most of the crew members were Australians, and some of us were Israelis. So we flew over to work there. It's a very low-budget film, like you were saying. It's a huge effort to make a feature-length animation film, especially for stop motion, and to top it all with low budget. So it's been a very challenging experience to try and make everything work and make Tatia's vision come to life and do all those detailed things with, you know, the design and the animation, and have everything going the way she really wanted it to look, and put it through. So it's been challenging but very rewarding. It was very enjoyable.
Most independent films are challenging, but an animated one seems like many more challenges. And you were the concept illustrator, and can you describe to people what that means? I'm not so sure everybody knows how departmentalized animation especially has to be, because it does take so many people and so much manpower truly to make every image, every frame per second happen. So maybe what your part as a concept illustrator is?
So basically, just to say, because it was such a tiny budget film, we had a really small crew of about 30 people working on it, which is unheard of under these circumstances.
It is. Yeah. I mean, large, like a Pixar or a Disney or something like that would have multiple companies actually working on it, because there's that much labor. So the idea that 30 people made one film is really amazing.
It is. I mean, that's not counting the post-production team and, you know, everybody on the other sides, but the production itself was around that figure. And so it's true that it was, it had to be very structured, like this department does that, and the communication between everybody had to work out really well for it to work. Um, but but every department had like 3 to 10 people on it.
Right.
So
So you probably did a lot
yeah.
of everything. And so a concept illustrator,
so
how does that fit in with the overall way that you make an animated
yeah,
film?
so that's actually my credit on the titles, but I did a little bit more.
That's what I figured,
If you
if
could,
it's
yeah.
an independent film.
Yeah. So I did a lot of design work on the film. I co-designed some of the sets and some of the puppets with the production designer, and some of the props, some of the prop dressings, and that would be sketching out how the puppets would actually look, and handing out those designs over to the sculptors where they can take those images and make the puppets. In terms of set dressings, it would be designing stuff like wallpapers on the apartments. This is an example for one of the apartments. One of the stories. The story takes place in a building where there are 5 apartments, and their tenants' lives they kind of run into each other. It's a little bit like an Altman sort of show. So this is an example for one of the apartments, and everything you see here was basically made. So all the coverings, the tiles on the walls, the wallpapers, the apron, all those little things had to be designed, illustrated, and worked. So it's 1/5. Yeah.
So he is like how tall?
Yeah, sort of.
Show me with your hands how tall he is. Okay.
So the whole scale is 1/5.
Yeah.
That's what your characters were.
Yeah.
Interesting. So 1/5 of an apron. That, yeah.
Yeah. And as concept illustrator, it would be pretty much the continuation of the design work, where you come up with the idea how a certain prop or set dressing would look like, or a puppet, and you just have to sketch it and hand over those illustrations over to the guys who make the puppets and make the props.
And when you saw the film, what did you think to have that much work? How long did you work on this project?
I was
then?
there for 6 months, worked on it. Pre-production was 3 months, and then they started shooting for another 9 months, and they stayed for 3 months more through the shooting process to get a little bit to tie in edges and stuff like that. But all in all, it was 6 months work. I was very happy when I saw the
Where did you see the final?
Actually, it was in another film festival in Spain, where I took the film, and I watched it 2 times in a row on the same day. And that was the first screening. Was the first time that I saw it all. I mean, I saw it before, but without the sound and everything, and the post-production, but this was the first time everything was really done. So it was very exciting, and I was really happy with it. And I thought that it was an effort that paid off.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I think people have some questions.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, when you illustrate, when you draw, do you do it from imagination? Just like, do you, or you, like?
Yeah. Sometimes I do, but most times I use references. And this was actually one of the most interesting and fun things in the process of the production, where the production designer, Melinda Doring, had actually brought over her personal library. I mean, physically, she brought the shelves and all the books in them into the studio, and a bunch of paper clips and stuff that she collected. And we got a lot of stuff out of the internet as well. So it was like a work of archive, filing all these things and going through all these images and picking up the things that we want to use and sketch out or design according to them. And we also had a bunch of stuff that Tatia Rosenthal, the director, came with, and she really knew this is this is a character that I want this character to look like a famous actor or an actress, and other visual material that she came with, that she brought with her. And so we had this huge library that we actually built up, and it was a fun thing for obsessive people to to work with, going through all these things, and
It sounds fun.
it was great.
Just the research idea.
Yeah,
So it was very collaborative, the whole image and design. Yeah.
very much so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Any more questions you guys have you want to shout out? You brought a few other examples,
Yeah.
right? Do you want to show them and explain them
Sure,
a bit?
yeah.
Can we get that back?
I can show a little bit of, it's not really in order, but we can go in a non-linear way. Some of the images, they show,
I think it's just heating up the projector again.
yeah, so this is an example of one of the sets before it's dressed. So just as it's coming out of the wood workshop, so just plain surfaces, and after everything had been drafted by the job person and built by the carpenters, it's just the structure bare. And I have a few more examples of that. Just, even at that point where there are no wallpapers or any of the colorful stuff, there's so many things that need careful planning and designing. So just like the refrigerator had to be thought of, and what exactly the side of the refrigerator would look like, and the scale, and the details, the handle, the label, that the linoleum on the floor, the shape of the chair. I mean, these are all things that we had to sketch out, design, and think through. So the living room of one of the apartments, again, undressed. This is all to scale. So an apartment, a typical apartment would have 2 or 3 areas, a kitchen and a living room, or an open kitchen with a bedroom coming out of it or going into it. And inside, the animators would work with their puppets. It was a really beautiful thing to see.
Do all
Those
the
sets.
you created still exist?
I
That's a
think,
good question.
yeah, I think very few survived, unfortunately.
So much work to
Yeah,
go into
I know,
that.
it's horrible. It's horrible because it was all done in Australia, and to ship it would cost a fortune, and nobody had a place to store it there. It was really tragic. I mean, I kind of suppressed that thought.
Well, it's interesting because we teach film. This is Stevens College that we're at the basement of, which is a partnership with Columbia Access Television, which is what station we're on. We have a film program, and one thing I'm always trying to get students to think about is art direction. I think they first think, oh, I'll just find this and that'll do, or I'll, and we try to get them to truly think about, would that be the refrigerator that person would truly have?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the best way is to have to build your own from the ground up models. But it would be nice to think they still existed somewhere. So maybe there is some little person living in there right now. Join it.
I hope so. I mean, the puppets are
they're
still,
hanging out there still.
But the sets, it's really sad. I mean, one of the sets that we had was a park that we built. It's huge. It's twice as big as all the other apartments, and it's all like all the trees and the bushes and everything. And that one, I know for a fact it's been destroyed because it was huge. Nobody had a place to store it.
I mean, that's interesting that it was such an international co-production. I was reading about that as well. How did that all come to be? That it was such an international co-production?
Yeah. Because Tatia Rosenthal, the director, she's Israeli, but she's been living in New York for the past 15 years. And when she worked with Edgar, they worked part of the time. She came to Israel, and they wrote together, and part of the time he came over. And along the way, they kept on trying to see how they were going to get it financed, and so they were looking for a way to finance it in Israel, and it was some sort of a weird coincidence that she came across Emil Sherman, who's the Australian director in the States, and he really liked the script, so he decided to take it on and work with it, and then he made the connection with the Israeli producer Amir Ariel with Lama Productions, and it's a little bit strange, but that's sort of, it's a bunch of strange
And then was
coincidences.
Australia chosen because it was a better place to do financially, or the animation, or is that where several people lived?
It was chosen because most of the money actually came from there.
That's what I assumed.
And they are very unionized, the artist and the crew member. So they had to consider a lot of laws that said you had to use local manpower and artists, and I think that was an important reason why it took place there. But it was good, you know. It was really like an educational experience, or really inspiring to just meet with these amazing artists, because some of the people who worked on this, you know, indie low budget production had done The Matrix before, or Superman, and these like master craftsmen and amazing sculptors, and they do this really, really low budget, weirdest looking film. So it's been an amazing experience in that sense. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Any other questions you guys want to shout out? Okay, keep going. We have more.
So that's a little bit more of the Sets Undressed. One of the things that when we started out, Tatia was thinking we might do everything skewed, like all the props would be designed with a little bit of an angle, and it didn't take more than a couple of days for the builders to say it's gonna take like 3 times as much and 3 times as costly, so we give it up. And also the initial intent was to design and make everything, like all the props, but eventually that turned out to be a huge effort and something that we couldn't manage. So we actually bought some. We didn't actually buy them. We got some miniature props ordered from Japan. It was really funny. We had contacted a company in Japan that makes miniatures, and they agreed to give away for publicity, you know, all these things. So we went through these catalogs of endless lists of things, and we had this box shipped in with like hundreds of little things in them. So that was a fun experience as well, getting these things over to the studio and placing them over at the sets. I don't know if but most of the things were made. That's Melinda Doring. She was a production
really
designer.
Sense of the scale there too.
Yeah, so that's in the process of dressing stuff.
So do you deliver like a real accurate drawing or a 3D drawing?
I know, I wondered that too. Does it start on a computer even, or do
What is
you?
the reference the builders get from
Most of the things that I handed over were actually drawn on paper, and that was so much fun for me, because that's the thing I love doing most. And whereas I'm just as comfortable working on a computer and digitally, it's just there's no comparison. You know, I was physically better and so much happier on the days where I drew on paper than on the days where I had to work on the computer.
When did you put it together, or was it separated prototypes? Like this is the fridge, this is, or would you really design the whole living room?
Yeah, no, you hand it over separately. Like for each prop, you hand a piece of paper with different angles and the measurements and the scale, And if you need any other important details that you want to make sure they get, so you write it on top. But each prop had its own piece of paper.
Wow.
Yeah. That's an example, by the way. That's an intercom.
Oh, yeah. Of
It was
course.
drawn to scale and handed over.
Uh-huh.
We couldn't find that in Japan. That's another example for the scale. That's one of the characters' apartment. She's a supermodel. The puppet that Helen is holding, that's Tanita, the supermodel, in her apartment. So they're both in it.
It's interesting. I mean, one thing I feel like is because it was an independent film, like animation to me, a classic big Hollywood theater type is very recipe driven, you know? And it seems so unique, the perspective of this film. I mean, even what they use animation for and the whole atmosphere that you've created in this world through these little sets and things, it just seems really unique in that sense. And I think it's great that somebody can take on that mountain of effort.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we don't really have any, to me, a lot of, I have kids, so I go to these things sometimes. And they're very similar,
I know.
if not sequels.
Yeah.
So it's refreshing to
Yeah.
see that with an adult theme even.
Yeah.
That's something worth saying. 999 is not marketed towards kids as an animated film. It's very much about interesting philosophical questions about life. So that itself is unique, and I think it speaks something to the spirit of a bunch of artists like yourself coming together, maybe with creative constrictions because of budget, but I think it produces something truly unique.
Yeah, and also it makes for, I dare say, more creativity when you have all these limitations and you have to figure out things within such constraints. You have to come up with a really good solution to so you could get your message across, and you want the scene to work, or you want the story to come across as it should be. You really have to be super creative to do it, that way. So it's true.
I know, it's a combination of creativity and, like you said, absolute, perfectionism, I feel, for animation and obsessive natures do thrive in that world of
They do.
intricate little things. So. That's
It's fun,
great.
though.
You'll
It's
have
fun,
a
though.
future forever.
Yeah.
Because I know some people go crazy when I have students who are interested in animation. And they come in as freshmen. It's like, well, see how much you like, obsessing over something for 12 hours a day. And some of them do. They always say, "Oh, I think I'm going to animate that," as though it will take them an afternoon. Not thinking frames per second. How many frames? Things you have to create create a few minutes even. And then I'd see them 3 months later, all tired and haggard. But the ones who love it, it's just a hugely different, hands-on, I think, often creative experience.
Yeah,
So.
it's very liberating as a profession to have your obsessive nature being legitimate.
Yes.
So it's one of the only things that you can do that you can actually be legitimate about it. It's very liberating. I love it. Yeah, actually, I was talking earlier about how when I grew up as a kid, and also I went to an art high school and later on to an art academy, I was very much focused on drawing and painting. That was the thing that rocked my world. And I was really focused on that. And at a certain point, I started asking myself all these questions like, okay, I really love drawing and I love painting, and this is one of the things that I live for, but what's the point of these pictures hanging on the wall? I mean, and why should I be the one who's doing that? I mean, how is that in service of something? And I had all these questions. And then illustration and animation started looking more and more like something that's more applied or applicable in some way, useful, I dare say. So I started doing that, and I just fell in love with the whole process of these two things. And animation is in particular, where you have so many mediums that are combined into the process, and also it being a collaborative process. where at the same time you can also do it on your own, so you also have the option. So here I am. And I studied animation. I did a degree in Holland, in Rotterdam, yeah. So this is where I'm coming from.
Did you ever work on a more commercial film or?
I worked on commercials and television, some stuff for television that I did, which is as commercial as you can get, I guess, or as I can get. The other films, actually, I storyboarded a film called The Band Visit, which is an award-winning Israeli production. So that would be more commercial than 999, actually. The Band Visit. Visit. Yeah, it's actually an Egyptian military or police orchestra band, but a band nevertheless. So yeah, I guess I kind of.
What's the main difference working on a commercial in terms
Of the craft or what you do? Is there a big difference between working on a commercial project or independent?
Well, yeah, there's so many differences. It seems like you can't even compare. I'd say the main thing that pops into mind would be that on a project like 999, the main drive would be the vision of the artist. In this case, Tatia's vision, and everyone who's involved as well, because it's a collaborative effort. And this is like, that's the engine, that's what drives things forward, whereas in commercial projects, it would be money. So, I mean, whereas here, money is something, it's something that you work with to make the vision come to life. And in commercial projects, it's the other way around. So it's such a huge difference. You can't even compare the two. It's how people relate to each other on the production.
Is that how, I know a lot of people who do commercial work and then more creative work to balance also just the lifestyle of getting paid a little bit better to then be able to do something a little more creative. Is that what it's like in your world? Or is it really more about finding the work wherever it is?
I'd say it's pretty much like that. This delicate balancing out. It's very tough, obviously. But yeah, that would be how things work out for me, basically. But I've been lucky to, I haven't been working since I graduated. Graduated 4 years ago, and I've had,
wow,
yeah.
you've done a lot. That's very inspiring for some of you, isn't it?
I started late, but since I finished school, I've been very lucky to come up with projects that I worked on with amazing artists, and apart from the commercial work that I've done, which some of it was really interesting as well, but the more artistic things that I've been involved with were really unique, and so I feel really privileged and grateful, you know, for these opportunities. And it's been really diverse as well, very different sort of things, and so.
Are you working on anything new now, or?
Actually, it's not 100% sure, but I might start teaching soon, which is good.
That's great.
I'm happy about that, yeah.
In Israel?
Yeah. And I'm getting into the motion of doing my own project,
Really?
working, yeah, so
Wonderful.
I hope that works out, yeah.
You'll have to come back to mid-Missouri. We do have a boomerang effect often, so it's not that unrealistic that you could come back, but that's great.
Yeah.
Any other questions you guys have?
I was curious, since it's like an international collaboration, did you guys have communication issues, like trying to get everybody on the same page and to work towards like creating what you wanted or what the initial creator wanted?
Yeah, it's interesting because I had a weird experience personally when I landed at Sydney at the airport. I took a cab to where I was gonna, to the studio with all my luggage. It was really funny.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, and on the way, I had this really weird experience, like I was home, and this continued throughout the 6 months that I was there. I felt at home and so much at ease with the people who were there. I found that there was somehow a similar mentality with Israelis and Australian, like a similar sense of humor, sensibilities, all these things, which is very strange because it's so far apart, you know? I don't know, maybe just a lot of sun exposure would do that to you. I don't know. I never managed to figure it out. But the thing is, we communicated really well. I mean, there were hardly any issues in that sense, and it really flowed. Yeah.
That's nice when projects end up that amazing, but the actual process was somehow right.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
they're hard enough to do, really. So
Definitely.
when that works, I feel like
Yeah.
you can be, you can do a lot of things if you've got that going for you.
Actually, what I was mentioning earlier when I said about my earlier training as a painter, and when I was asking myself these questions, why does anybody need a picture on the wall? And of course, I'm simplifying it. I know why it's important and I love going to museums and all. But I was asking the same question again when I was there, and it's something that kind of follows me around all the time. And when I was in Sydney, I was asking myself, what is this good for? People are starving and they have no food, and we're doing this. Why does the world need that? And the one thing that came into mind was not even the audience, but the actual crew, so we could have this experience. So all these amazing artists would have work for the year that they spent on this project, and being able to do their craftsmanship and to have it that it makes sense within this larger frame. That alone to me made perfect sense, and it was the best reason that I could come up with.
I think that's really neat that you even see it that way.
Yeah.
I don't, it's hard to imagine a really large animated film. People really worry about that it's fulfilling for the crew and that they have work, and that's really amazing, I think.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
What would you recommend to a beginner starting out in your field?
Ooh.
That's a good question, because I feel like people end up in your world in many different, especially today, I feel like there's people who go very much down the technical computer-based world and end up there, and then more artists that end up there.
It's a tough question. The thing is, with animation, you have so many different fields that you can choose, and I think maybe that's one of the most important things, is to know what you love best. Even if you choose to go down 3D lane and work on CG for the rest of your life, even within that, there are so many different types of specialties. You'd have, lighting. You have a lighting expert and a rigger and a texture expert and this and that. Or if you want to be a stop motion animator or a 2D animator, or if you want to do all of the above. So maybe the first thing would be to know what you love doing most, and then start researching the field and how you can work with that to be able to do it. I mean, really the most important thing for me would be to do what you really love doing, because it's such a demanding job. You really need to be a certain type of person to be able to.
Did animation school, you said in Rotterdam, was that helpful? Did that help you figure out the different avenues, or did you kind of know before you went there?
I did know before I went there, because my strong inclination with drawing and all that, but it helped me a lot, yeah. When I started school there, actually the first couple of months I was an illustration major, and then I was sure, I was really clear on, okay, animation is actually, it's everything that I've always liked doing all at the time. So trying to figure out how to work, getting paid while doing what you love, doing best would be
It's kind
very
of the magical question
yeah,
about life.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
No, but it's true. I
putting
think
all the
especially
effort.
in creative worlds, because I feel like when I talk to students, you know, especially if they want to do something more artistic that's less commercial, and how you get paid for that, it's sometimes figuring out, you know, how you'd be happiest. If
Yeah.
you'd be happiest editing all day for another service and then doing your own thing,
Yeah.
or doing something totally unrelated and doing your own thing, and eventually that thing starts to make money, and where you switch that, you know, over is complicated.
It is very much complicated, and that's one of the reasons that I'm turning into teaching now, because I think it's a lot less stressful on
It
time,
is.
and it would. Thank
I mean,
you
it
for
isn't,
supporting
but-
my decision.
No, I mean, well, like all our faculty are working filmmakers who teach, but
Yeah.
they love teaching.
Yeah.
Like for them, they'd rather do that than probably, we've all freelanced in other ways.
Yeah.
And that's, like, it's hard for me to work on other projects all day and then feel creative afterwards.
Exactly,
But it's really
exactly.
easy for me to talk to students, and that's actually its own sort of creative force. And then it
Yeah.
actually kind of gets you thinking about your process. And then there's those breaks that are nice that you don't have in a lot of other careers, summers off and things
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that. So yeah,
Yeah,
it is,
no.
I think, conducive for that.
I feel kind of saturated with the commercial freelancing work, and I think for me, doing the art projects is my top priority, and I really want to be able to make the time for that. So, and as you were saying, I also feel that teaching is very creative as well. It's also, in a sense, a collaborative process. You don't have to be like this authority figure who's like downloading information onto the students, but more cooperating with them. And I'm sure that you can learn so much. Like I really can't wait to do that.
Yeah, I think it's just a real mentoring type thing, and
Yeah.
there's still so much to learn. You'd be great. I'm glad to hear that you're going into teaching. If you ever want to move to Columbia, Missouri, give me a call. Does anybody else have questions? I don't know how much time we have left. We have like 5 more minutes. Do you have any more clips that you want to show? Or?
I don't know. I think that was pretty much it. Maybe one more. Helen. Yeah, that's an example. It's zooming in for some reason. That's the supermodel puppet that I was talking about earlier, against the backdrop of one of the wallpapers that I designed. That
It's
took
beautiful.
Thank you. That was one of the biggest efforts of my work there. I spent, for some reason that I still can't figure out, I spent a whole week, 12 hours a day, designing this thing.
It's pretty intricate wallpaper, and it looks hand-drawn. I mean, it doesn't look like your, you know, stick-up wallpaper.
Yeah.
So your project that you said you're developing now, is that in puppets, or is that 2D, or is that?
No, that would be
How are you
2D.
imagining that?
Yeah. So that's the one thing that's consistent throughout. That's 2D and drawings. It's probably going to be, according to my plans at the moment, like this modular thing made out of illustrations that are made out into little animated films or clips, and they're all going to kind of interact with each other.
Because that's one thing people always ask about animation. I'm not so sure people are always clear, just your average audience, the different choices among, you know, animation is anything that you create and move and,
Yeah.
you know, per second, but it can be so many different things.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure how I'm going to show that, but that's...
There's
these are
time to
plans.
figure that out.
Yeah.
Maybe this weekend you'll have an epiphany. Well, thank you very much for joining us. You can see $9.99 tomorrow at Ragtag. We have an earlier screening and a later screening. We still have tickets on sale at our box office, which is at Ragtag, which is 10 Hit Street, and we hope you'll be there. We're really happy because Shira came all the way from Israel to share this with you, and it really is exciting, and especially after hearing the making of it, it would be really great to see that come to life. That's probably very similar to how you felt when you saw it. So please join us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shira.